In the eerie night of the early 1980s, small-time labor worker Harshad Mehta would decide to leave his job and pursue the stock market business, not knowing that in a couple years he would be at the forefront of India's biggest financial scam. Early on, Harshad wasn't a standout guy by any means. He lived in a small home with his parents' younger brother and wife in Gujarat, India. He worked in many labor jobs, and in terms of money, well, he had enough to live a simple life. But Harshad wanted more from life. He wanted a better home. He wanted to support his family and parents financially. He wanted a job where he didn't have to work day and night only to earn enough money to live a mediocre life. So he left his old job, convinced his family that this was the way to get rich, and took to the stock market. Harshad joined a small-time investment firm as a broker to get exposure to the market and learn as much as he could. After realizing just how powerful the market can be to someone who knew how to use it effectively, Harshad decided that he wanted to create his own investment firm. After pulling some strings to get enough money, he would start his own investment firm called Grow More with his younger brother Aswin. Grow More started gaining a lot of traction in the market because Harshad was using an investment quote-unquote strategy called insider trading. Insider trading conceptually is very simple. It involves trading a company's stock based on information that isn't public. For the sake of example, let's look at a car manufacturer who just sent out a shipment of 20,000 cars. As it turns out, all of the cars that were sent in that shipment had a suspension defect. Well, this would mean that all 20,000 cars would need to be recalled, and once this news would hit the public, it would cause the company's stock to drop. So what Harshad would do is have an insider person, hence the name insider trading, who would tell him that there would be a recall before this information hit the public. So Harshad would sell and avoid the losses. It would be an understatement to say that this strategy was effective, but the issue is that this practice is illegal in most countries, India being one of them. Nevertheless, Harshad had his eye on the prize, money. Using this strategy, it meant that Harshad knew exactly when to buy and sell, and like the name suggests, Grow More grew to big heights. With the success of his firm, this would allow Harshad to get into contact with big names and companies, which would prove to be very useful for him later on. At the time in India, the money market was known to be much more successful than the share market, so when Harshad saw an opportunity to go higher, well, he did exactly just that. The money market is a component of the economy which provides short-term funds. This market deals in short-term loans generally for a period of a year or less. This market wasn't perfect. As a matter of fact, it was nowhere near being perfect. There was countless loopholes that if one knew, could exploit to make a fortune. Harshad, the cunning man that he was, knew about these loopholes. There was two in specific that he used extensively, the first being stamp and paper fraud. Up to the early 90s, banks in India were not allowed to invest in equity markets. However, they were expected to post profits and to retain a certain ratio of their assets in government fixed interest bonds. Harshad cleverly squeezed capital out of the banking system to address this requirement of banks and pumped this money into the share market. He also promised the banks higher rates of interest while asking them to transfer the money into his personal account under the guise of buying securities for them from other banks. At the time, a bank had to go through a broker to buy securities and forward bonds from other banks. Harshad used this money temporarily in his account to buy shares, thus hiking up demands of certain shares dramatically, selling them off, passing on a part of the proceeds to the bank, and keeping the rest for himself. This resulted in famous stocks like ACC, which was trading in 1991 for 200 rupees a share, to spike at 9,000 rupees a share in just 3 months. The second loophole Harshad used was bank receipt fraud. In a ready-forward deal, securities were not moved back and forth in actuality. Instead, the borrower, i.e. the seller of securities, gave the buyer of the securities a bank receipt, or BR in short. The BR serves as a receipt from the selling bank and also promises that the buyer will receive the securities they have paid for at the end of the term. Having figured this out, Harshad needed banks which could issue fake BRs, or BRs not backed by any government securities. Once these fake BRs were issued, they were passed on to other banks, and the banks in turn gave money to Harshad, plainly assuming that they were lending against government securities when this was not actually the case. Using these two methods, Harshad not only became a billionaire but a legend among the stock market. People referred to him as the Big Bull and compared him to famous film actors at the time due to his very lavish lifestyle. Harshad owned a sea-facing 15,000 square feet penthouse equipped with a swimming pool and a golf course. He had a huge collection of exotic cars at the time, all of which exemplified his image at a time in India when these were rarities even for the rich people. With his rags to riches story, everyone, kids and adults alike, wanted to be the next Harshad Mehta. It would be an understatement to say that Harshad was living the life, and he truly was unstoppable. That is, until journalist Suchita Dalal came into the equation. Harshad's practices weren't foreign to people. It wasn't hard to question how he had so much money to run the prices of these low-valued stocks, but the problem was that Harshad was too powerful. Every big politician, businessman, and broker was in with Harshad, so the people who knew of his money sources didn't bother to speak up. He had also gained the trust of the people, so without hard proof, no one believed that Harshad was doing anything illegal. But Suchita Dalal, a journalist at the Times of India, knew about Harshad's practices. She knew that Harshad had money until his sources where he got his money were kept hidden. But as soon as those sources were known to the public, Harshad barely had enough money to run a convenience store, let alone the whole stock market. Harshad was smart, so it was very hard to find any concrete proof against him, but Suchita knew that this information had to be released to the public. All the money Harshad had belonged to the people of India. So after pleading to the head of the journal board, Suchita was given permission to write a column on the Times of India about Harshad's illegal practices. This sparked a huge wildfire of investigations on Harshad. Big banks like Central Bank of India, or CBI in short, and other financial agencies conducted investigations on Harshad. Not to mention, after the article that Suchita published, the stock market crashed for months on end. Harshad would be charged with 27 criminal charges and spend most of the remainder of his short life in and out of prison, until suddenly in 2001 Harshad would die by a heart attack at the age of 47. At the time of his death, he was only convicted for 4 out of the 27 criminal charges. After his death, Harshad still remained a hero to most people. Some financial experts believe that Harshad Mehta did not commit any fraud. He had simply exploited loopholes in the system. It was for this reason that I tried to refrain from using the word illegal in this video, because many to this day still think that Harshad didn't do anything illegal, but that I'll leave for you to judge. These loopholes that Harshad exploited would soon after be filled in, and Harshad would be remembered as the man who caused India's biggest financial scam.